YouTube, new program review today. And we're working on Tonii's program, who actually submitted something that I consider to be a good example of a training regimen that will not take me too much time to review because it's actually quite good. So when that happens and I don't have glaringly obvious mistakes to correct, I tend to try and focus on the small things so that you can push your program further. So Tonii spends five days per week in the gym. He has an upper-lower template and an additional arm day. And that's something that I actually tend to favor. It's the template of the last program I proposed on the channel. It's a gentleman's split. Here he doesn't call it that, but it resembles it a lot. So of course I'm going to be favorable towards that type of organization of the training because I think it's superior. So what he does here is, first day is upper body strength. And he gives appellation and qualifications to each day. So this one is a strength day. We'll see that that has its importance for the overall quality of the program. He starts it with bench, 4 sets of 4 to 6 reps, which is basically strength work for an horizontal press. That is a good rep range. It is, however, going to represent a range that with that set count means you're going to sandbag. Because if you got 6 reps for the first set, the chances of you being able to repeat the effort enough so that you can get 4 reps at the 4th set means that the weight is not 100% challenging and it doesn't really push your limits and you can always get back to baseline easily. That's not a bad thing. Sandbagging is not always a bad thing if it's used strategically. And it can also be impacted by the weight increments and the weight jumps. If you want to know more about that, Evolving Rep Range playlist. He follows that up by incline dumbbell press. And the rep range is relevant because it does 4 sets of 10 to 12. And that justifies the use of the previous rep range. Why? 4 sets of 10 to 12 is the exact opposite. It's going to represent a higher rep range, so more volume, but you understand that if you can get 10 to 12 for 4 sets, most likely you had some strength in reserve because you're able to hit those higher rep ranges repeatedly to accumulate high quality volume. And that's possible because of the previous rep range. So that's excellent. And nothing to say about the rep ranges here and the set selection, it's good. After that, overhead press and pull-ups before that, sorry. The pull-ups are going to be in a 8 to 10 rep range for 3 sets. That's a good rep range for pull-ups. Followed by overhead press. So the overhead press here is 3 sets. 3 sets is a little bit low for vertical presses, but we're going to see that because it is following an incline dumbbell press, there was already a vertical press in the program. So Tonii is already going to be fatigued. So that makes total sense in that context. 3 sets of 6 to 8, that's higher volume for the overhead press, but that's perfectly fine. And same logic, the rep range is here actually much more relevant because there's only 3 sets. So the 6 to 8 makes sense outside of the fact that you're pre-fatigued when you enter the set. After that, barbell rows, 4 sets of 6 to 8. So barbell rows, it's a lift that most people don't really know where to put. They don't know if they want to put it on the upper, on the lower day, should they do it on the pull day, on the leg day? They're not sure. There's an art behind it and I will make a full video on barbell rows for hypertrophy, but I think that this is a good placement of the barbell row because they actually fit real well on upper body days. Why? Because your lumbar spine and posterior chain are not fatigued. So you're at the lesser risk of injury. You're not going to damage your ability to target the upper back because the posterior chain is just tired from the deadlift or the squats. So that's good. There's an opposite contradictory argument that could be offered here, which would be to say, yes, you're fresh, but you also need to warm up now because your legs and your posterior chain are not warm up. And that's true. You need to warm up a lot when you do rows. That being said, because he does them in the 6 to 8 rep range for 4 sets, he sandbags and he does them in higher rep ranges. So that's great because the risk of injury is lowered and you can be certain that the reps are going to be quality because the range allows you to always get those quality reps because you're never really pushing the progression too much. The progression here is pushed by the repetition of sets with the same movement patterns. So it's a different strategy of volume accumulation, but one that is just as valid. And you'll see that the barbell rows are echoed somewhere else in the program during the weekly training split. So it's the same result. It's a biset. The sets are doubled. After that, he does dips. This is the first lift where I'm sort of thinking that it could maybe be taken out of the program. Why? You've already done bench, incline dumbbell press, and overhead press. The shoulders are going to be tired by that point. So the dips might not be super necessary, especially since I think you do them with body weight. That being said, depending on the way you do them, if you do them very, very vertically, you could be targeting the triceps more. So that's not necessarily an issue. But if there was something I would take out of the program, it would be the dips. Then he does incline dumbbell skullcrushers, 3 sets of 8 to 10. Excellent lift, long head of the triceps, needs a lot of work. And that's a rep range that actually represents an intensity window that is going to be challenging for the muscle group. And it's excellent. You don't want to always be doing super high rep ranges for your small muscle groups and body parts, because then you never progress. And because you never progress in strength, they never progress in size, and that's an issue. Then he does preacher curls, 3 sets of 8 to 10, same logic, excellent rep range for the biceps. Facepulls, 3 sets of 10 to 12. First rep range where I'm thinking it's a little bit too low. Facepulls, you really want to go high. We want to go even high enough that the intensity window stops being relevant, because it's not the point of the lift. It's more of a rehab exercise, and it provides a movement that creates external rotation of the shoulder to a point that it's quite unnatural, but it provides that work that the shoulder never gets. So it's good. I usually tell people do 15 to 20 reps or as many reps as possible. And usually you want to do them with a band. The issue when you do them weighted is it changes the strength curve too much. And it's not a lift you want to do with poor form, because it can actually lead to injury. And then he does lateral raises, 3 sets of 10 to 12. Excellent rep range for that exercise. So as far as that day goes, in terms of superset, you can superset the incline dumbbell press with the pull-ups. You can superset the pull-ups with the overhead press. So you can make a choice. You have your strength work that is never supersetted. That's your bench. But after that, you can either choose to have overhead press as a secondary strength movement, or incline dumbbell press, and the other one can be just supersetted with the pull-ups. So it's less of a priority. I would tell you to do that for the incline dumbbell press. And then it's a matter of set placement. It's usually tough to do 2 strength focused movements back to back. I like to put something that is a superset in the middle, and because of the rep ranges, the incline dumbbell press would be much more obvious in terms of choice. So you would be doing bench, then incline dumbbell press supersetted with pull-ups, then your overhead press as a strength work, so no superset. Then you would do your barbell rows. The thing with the barbell rows is that we're going to have a tendency to want to do them as a strength work type of set. The issue is that you would end up with 3 of these, and because you don't superset them, it takes a lot of time. So your first day in the gym would be quite long. That's not an issue, but understand that the barbell row can be pretty much supersetted with everything, because none of the other lifts are going to take away from your ability to row. So if you want to superset the barbell row with the incline dumbbell skullcrushers, the preacher curls, it doesn't change anything. I say that because you also have the ability to do a giant set to close the day with incline dumbbell skullcrushers, preacher curls, facepulls, and lateral raises, because none of these lifts take away from the other. So it would be a valid giant set. It would be a good giant set. And if you do facepulls followed by lateral raises, you will find that because you fill the real head of the delt so much, you actually get a better connection. It doesn't take away from it. So you're left with a ton of options here. I cannot tell you which one is the best option. It's going to be up to you. But keep that in mind, because your upper day 1 has a ton of potential for supersets and set manipulation tactics. But good day, good exercise selection, good rep ranges, good set selection. This is a good day. Day 2, lower body strength. Starts with squats, 4 sets of 4 to 6, deadlift, 3 sets of 4 to 6. So the rep ranges I'm not going to comment on, because they resemble the one about on the bench. It's the same logic behind it. There's no issue with it. You will see, however, that for that day it creates an issue. Why? because there's a squat and a deadlift. This is something I advise people not to do. And I advise people not to do that because one of the two lifts will suffer. So if you do your standard squat and your standard deadlifts, and you both program them in terms of strength work, but one follows the other, you understand that the one that follows the other is going to suffer because you're going to enter it tired. And the way you've done it here, you've done it in the way that is going to be the least conducive to injury at least, so that's a good thing. But you're still going to enter the deadlift with a fatigued lumbar spine, potentially some difficulties with your thoracic spine in terms of solidity and rigidity. So that's going to take away. What I advise people to do is, you do want a knee flexion and a hip hinge on lower body movements because you want full development of the leg, and there's no point and also an impossibility of isolating the quads, for example. You want to train the entirety of the lower body frequently. That's how you get big legs as a natural. But you don't want it you don't want it to take the place and the form of strength work. So you'll do, for example, squat as strength work, then you'll do a hip hinge variation. Okay, so that can be Romanian deadlift, post deadlift, any type of deads that are going to mimic your conventional style of deadlift or sumo style, whatever you like to do, but it's going to be done with higher rep ranges or a lowered intensity through sandbagging of sorts. It's up to you. That's what I recommend. And the reason why I recommend that is, if I look at the rest of the program, you do single leg presses, you do leg extensions, you do leg curls. There is nothing wrong with those movements. There are isolation movements for the legs. There are unilateral movements for the legs, which I'm not a fan of personally, but I'm not saying they're bad. That being said, you could save so much time just doing a compound instead. To me, it's all about saving time. Plus, the compound is going to feed into your squat and deadlift through specificity. Single leg presses have zero specificity to anything. Leg extensions, it's even worse. Leg curls, it's the same logic. It's not a movement that replicates any type of joint angle that you actually apply in a compound. So they train the muscle, which feeds the movement, but you could be getting so much more and save a lot of time. So what I would say you do on that day, you do your squats, right? You push your squats, then you do your hip hinges, but you're going to do 4 sets of 8 to 12 or 4 sets of 6 to 10, depending on the exercise. You could do 4 sets of 3 reps, again, depending on your selection and the intensity that you like to apply. Then you're going to do a superset of, let's say, single leg press and leg curl. Then you slap that with the calf raises, and you've got yourself a giant set at the end of the workout that makes a ton of sense. It lets you use those machines that you seem to be liking, and you don't waste time. Plus, you got good practice without shooting yourself in the foot in terms of progress and fatigue management. Because what I think you did, Tonii, is you do squat and deadlifts, and you modify the set range of the deadlift so that you only do 3. The issue is that if you do it in any type of relevant intensity window, 3 sets of deadlifts for 4 to 6 reps is already a lot of work on the deadlifts. It's a lot. The deads need to be taken very seriously in terms of fatigue management. So you do both of these things, and I think you do them because you embraced the idea that leg days need to be tough, and they need to be tough, and they need to be focused about compounds, but you took it to an extreme, in my opinion. Yes, we want leg days to be minimalistic in nature. They need to be smaller than upper body days, but you pushed it too far, I think. Because if you do, for example, a hip hinge instead of the deadlift, you could also potentially add some backup sets for the squats, modify the set selection for the squat, maybe do a squat variation in between the normal squat and the hip hinge. It opens up doors, okay? So I'm not saying what you did was bad, I'm just saying you have other opportunities and options. And for the rest of the day, you do 10 minutes of abs at the end of the workout. That's great. Ab isolation is the way to bigger abs. I would suggest, because you've done squats and deads on that day, to do them hanging from a bar so that you can get some spinal decompression, which is critical for the health of your lumbar spine. Day 3, you do upper body hypertrophy. And that's an appellation and qualification I will talk about here because it's important for that day. You start with close grip bench. So it's a variation of your bench. It's an excellent one. You do 4 sets of 6 to 8. Since you do 4 sets, you could really do a 6 to 10. you would find that this opens up the window of progression much more. Plus, with the way I'm going to modify that day, because it's the day I'm going to modify the most, you'll see that it'll make much more sense in terms of tonnage accumulation. Then you do chest flies, so you do something with a close grip, then something to open up the chest. That's quite smart. 4 sets of 10 to 12, perfect rep range for that. Sandbagging to the max on that lift, because who cares? The injury risk is too high. You just want to get a good weighted stretch. That's perfect. Pull-ups, 3 sets of 8 to 10. Again, excellent. You have a good frequency for vertical pulls. Overhead press, 3 sets of 8 to 10. So you tend to try and stay in the higher rep ranges for overhead press, and that's fine. And as I explained before, the overhead press echoes the one you've done on upper body day 1, so you get a lot of sets of high quality vertical pulls, vertical presses. That's great. Understand that if you start stalling at that lift, lower rep ranges could be your savior, because you're going to experience higher intensity with that lift, and that could help you keep putting weight on the bar. So keep that in mind. Then you do your barbell rows. Again, it echoes the sets of day 1. 4 sets of 8 to 10, perfect rep range. You just push it a little bit higher in the reps here, and that makes sense. But you'll see that it's a trend that is repeated throughout day 3, and that creates issues, but I'll explain that later. Then you do overhead extensions, 3 sets of 12 to 15, great for the long head. V-bar pushdowns, where you do a pyramid set. Then you do an easy bar curls, 3 sets of 8 to 10, followed by an hammer curl. Here there's an issue. You have 2 lifts that recruit very similar muscle groups that are small muscle groups that take a long time to recover inside the workout, not during the weekly frequency, but during the intra-workout frequency. And then you do dumbbell shrugs, 4 sets of 12 to 15, then straight bar pull downs, 3 sets of 10 to 12. Okay, why did I say that the hypertrophy qualification of that day sort of gave me a preconceived idea, and a pretty good idea actually, of what I was going to see? It's because I see a lot of reps, I see a lot of sets, and I see a lot of exercises. It's not a bad thing for upper body days. That's what upper body days need to look like. That being said, the way it's organized, the way it echoes day 1, makes me think that you can rearrange it to get better results. Because, for example, you're doing an easy bar curl and an hammer curl on the same day. That's not a bad thing, but you need to space them because they're too close to one another. Other things, if you look at the tricep recruitment and the amount of tricep isolation you do, you end up doing a ton on day 3 and not as much as you think on day 1. So you could be taking the V-bar pushdowns and put them somewhere in day 1. And as far as lifts that I would potentially take out, maybe the pulldowns, because you already get your long head of the tricep work for that day. If you want more lat work, you can just do more pull-ups. It would save the need for that extra set, unless you really like that movement. But if there's one movement that is expendable, it's this one. As far as the rest goes, the way I would organize that day, there is a ton of potential for supersets. And as I explained before with your day 1, you're left with a few issues because there are lifts that are going to be very tempting to organize in terms of strength work. The close grip bench, the overhead press, and the barbell rows. The thing is, none of these justify strength work, meaning that even a straight up bench, you can superset it. I create programs where I superset benches with rows. Why? You can get away with it. It's one of the few compounds where you can get away with it. Same for overhead press, same for pull-ups. The ones that I will never superset with anything are squats and deadlifts. So here you could, which means that it's a lot of flexibility. So it's going to be up to you to manipulate that to your likings, because something that you could be doing is close grip bench as strength work. Then you can superset the pull-ups with the overhead press, and then you can superset the barbell rows with the chest flies, for example, and then do a giant set of overhead extensions, easy bar curls, and potentially, let's scratch that. Strength focus with close grip bench. Because what we're going to do also is, even though it's a different movement pattern in a sense, I also want to take the flies and move them away from the close grip bench. So close grip bench as strength work. Then you do your pull-ups, your overhead press supersetted with pull-ups. Then you do your barbell rows supersetted with hammer curls. Then you're going to do your overhead extension supersetted with the easy bar curls, supersetted with the overhead extension, supersetted with the straight bar pull downs if you want to keep them. But that again, to me, keeps the curls too close. So you might have to move the rows up and do the overhead press after the rows. So that you do the barbell rows and hammer curls, then the overhead press and pull-ups, and then you do your easy bar curls. That way the biceps get time to recuperate. And the chest flies are still close to the close grip bench. So that's the issue I had with that day is it's priorities. You're going to have to prioritize something. You could also just say scratch that and decide to keep, for example, the overhead press as pure strength work with no supersets, which is going to mean that you're going to end up with two sets as supersets, as a strength work. And in that case, as I said before, you don't want them to follow each other. So you might do something like the close grip bench, then you do your superset with the barbell rows and the hammer curls, and then you do your overhead press. And then the pull-ups can actually enter a giant set with the overhead extensions and the easy bar curls because they are not the same muscles, so that can work. You will have noticed that I didn't really mention the V-bar pushdowns because I say that they would be better on day one. The straight bar pull downs because I straight up took them out because if you understand the way I reorganized everything, they sort of duplicate the pull-ups and the behind that extension, so I don't really think they fit on that day. And the shrugs I just didn't even mention. Why? You could save a ton of time by not doing the shrugs. And instead, when you're done with your rows, you complete the rep of the deadlift and you shrug to failure. Because the relationship between your rowing strength and your shrugging strength is going to be positive and skewed towards the shrugging strength. So you're going to be able to get a ton of volume that way. It saves you time. It's an easy superset, so why not? And if you really want to create hypertrophy in the traps, you do that through weighted stretch. And where do you put that weighted stretch? On day two. Why? Because I just opened up a lot of space on your day two. Meaning that you could open the giant set of day two with your leg extensions and everything with a heavy rack pull. That could also be a hip hinge variation. You could be doing a knee part shrug that would be a weighted straight variation. All of that would be a better use of your time than dumbbell shrugs. So that's that. So that day three again, tons of potential, but there's a few things that I would take away as I explained. Day four, and also because I didn't mention that, the reason why I reorganized everything, and I said it before, it's good to have days that are going to be more skewed towards the qualities of strength and some who are going to be more skewed towards the quality of hypertrophy. You don't want to go too far. You went too far on day two towards strength. You went too far on day three towards hypertrophy. I hope you understand what I mean because it's important. You did too much. You focused too much on low reps and set selection for your day two, and you did the exact opposite on your day three. So let's see if you follow that up on day four because you do lower body hypertrophy. You start with squats, 4 sets of 6 to 8. Okay. Then RDLs, 3 sets of 6 to 8. Okay, so far so good. Then you do leg extensions, 3 sets of 10 to 12, leg curls, so all of your stuff you do afterwards. So here, I do think that you ended up with that problem because you went from 4 sets of 4 to 6 to 4 sets of 6 to 8. That's actually a big improvement in tonnage, and that's a good thing. That being said, I think it's too much, at least for your standard squat, because you would, I think, make better gains if you actually replicated the 4 to 6 that you do for your day two, and then slap a variation of the knee flexion. So like a post squat, for example. It will also help avoid overuse injuries. The RDL, actually, I'm pleasantly surprised. It's a good rep range. It's a little bit aggressive, 3 sets of 6 to 8, but if it works for you, it works for you. Then you sort of do your leg press and all of that. If you want to keep it because it looks like you like it, but please giant set it. And if you giant set it, the leg press and leg extensions are going to be duplicates of each other. One can go. Get rid of one and just do more knee flexion. But don't do it in the way you've done for your set selection, the rep selection here, because the sandbag strategy that you apply with your 4 sets of 4 to 6s start becoming a little bit too much with a 6 to 8, because you're going to end up, because there's more weight, there's more reps, doing more reps that are not going to be in relevant intensity windows. And the issue is that when you do that, you sort of do a gamble in a sense, because you expect to get higher intensity somewhere else through the replication of sets. But because you apply a minimalist strategy to your lower body days, it doesn't work. That strategy of sandbagging works on your upper body days because the sets echo each other, but it doesn't work here because the echo of the set within the day is not present, because I don't think that the movements you do afterwards for the leg have the specificity that are going to be able to feed into that squat. That's what I meant by that. So I do think that you could just do more of a variation of the knee flexion instead of that leg press, for example. Then you can finish with your giant set. If you want to burn yourself out, then your abs. So as I said before, that's what happens when the program is good. Tonii, I want you to know that your program is good. I mean, I'm nitpicking here because you can always optimize, and this is an advanced program, okay? Don't freak out. I'm sure you can understand it easy, but it doesn't mean that what you've done is poorly crafted. It just means that there are certain concepts that could push your program even further. Day 5, you do arms. And he does that because his triceps are lagging, which is a perfectly good reason to do an arm day. Close grip bench. So again, a close grip bench. Having a repetition of an horizontal press on an arm day is excellent because you need compound movements on an arm day, or else you're just wasting your time, in my opinion, because every single day needs to have a strength work component to it. And the close grip bench is actually one you can repeat because it's easy on the shoulders, but it can be tough on the elbows. And you do a ton of long head work, which can be tough on the triceps if it's behind the head. So be careful with that. Pay attention to your triceps, please, and your elbows. Then you do dips. So excellent. It complements the close grip bench, and it's focused on the triceps, so all good. Then overhead tricep extension, then easy bar curls, then incline dumbbell curls. Okay, not going to touch that. Arm days, to me, if there is one type of day that is the most personal and that are going to be specific to who you are, it's arm days. So I'm not going to touch it. I would say, however, that just with the same logic, you want to separate the sets so that they're not so close to each other, so that the small muscle groups can recover. And I would say here that we're going to do what I said before, where we're going to say no to strength work on that day, in the sense that you're still going to do a compound, so you're still going to get specificity training to your horizontal press to progress, but we're going to superset the close grip bench with the overhead extension, and then you're going to be doing your, scratch that. Close grip bench supersetted with the easy bar curls, then you're going to do your dips as its own thing, and you can superset that with abs if you want, for example. And then you will do the easy bar curls, the incline curls. And what is the other thing I saw? Okay, yeah, and then the incline dumbbell curls. I still don't like it because you end up doing solitary sets for dips and incline dumbbell curls. It does create that distanciation. I forgot the overhead extensions. So close grip bench, then easy bar curls, then you do your dips by themselves, then you do overhead extensions and incline dumbbell curls. That's okay. I would like you to add like a forearm isolation that you can superset with the dips, a shoulder isolation, some Facepulls, just to make it worth it. I really like giant sets on arm days. Your arm day is small enough that you can just do supersets with 2 exercises, so that's fine. So I'm going to leave you with that. The routine is actually good. Don't change that routine, it's good. I think you must be making good progress on that. But listen to what I said and maybe reorganize it. The good thing about what I'm proposing is that you don't really have to add any exercise besides the one for the traps. So you're going to stay within the range of specificity that you already applied and trained. You're not going to have to relearn anything. And I think it's going to be beneficial for your training. So thank you for submitting that program, Tonii. For people who might look for an upper lower template and who have weak triceps, that's a good program. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.